This is the Samsung Galaxy S20. It was released in February of this year with, I would say, a pretty good rating of 4 out of 5 stars. Now that it's in July, several months later, the phone has gotten a number of updates that makes it different. But different just how? Let's find out. Hey guys, Rahul here and welcome back to my channel. So a couple of weeks ago, I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw the Speed by Exynos, and it was about how the zoom feature of the Samsung Galaxy S20 has improved over time using software updates. And it kind of got me thinking, what else did they improve? So I did what any YouTuber with 122 subscribers should do. That was to buy a brand new Samsung Galaxy S20, to unbox it, to test it and find out. So after turning on the phone, I did not even connect it to the Wi-Fi just to make sure that it doesn't accidentally get updated. You can see that the last security update version was back in February when the device was released. And this is essentially the software that literally every other reviewers out there reviewed this device with. So I wanted to see how much of a difference there is from when they reviewed this device until now. Okay, so here's how this is going to work. We're going to talk about 3 things and 3 things only. That is the camera, the battery life, and finally the performance itself. Now let's start with the cameras. Just a quick refresher, the Galaxy S20 comes with a triple camera setup, the first being a wide-angle 12 megapixel camera, the second being a primary 12 megapixel camera, and the final one being a 64 megapixel telephoto lens. The front-facing one is a 10 megapixel camera. Now to start off with our very first image. Now quickly looking at this, it's a bright and sunny day and it looks like a really good Samsung photo. And what I mean by Samsung photo is it looks saturated with a lot of contrast. It looks great to the naked eye, but there isn't much details going on here. Especially if you zoom in a little bit, it completely falls apart. You can see here in these buildings, there is absolutely no detail at all. In fact, it looks almost blurred out intentionally by Samsung's post-processing. I am really confused at what is happening here, and I've noticed in several different photos where if there isn't enough details, post-processing just completely blurs it out. Okay, now this is the same photo taken after the update. Now putting this side by side, there is a lot of difference here. For one, the HDR is so much more stronger in the image taken after updating. Upon close inspection, you can notice it's literally a night and day difference. That weird blur thing with the post-processing thing is not even present in this updated image, and it's not anywhere to be seen at all. Another thing that I'm noticing is the color science is a little bit different too. And in fact, the image taken after updating looks much more accurate and more real life than the one before updating. Now looking at the photos taken using the primary camera, this is the one taken before updating. This is the one taken after updating. In hindsight, both these images look really good, but upon close inspection, you can notice the same thing is happening here. The image taken after updating the device has a much better HDR, more details, and are much more color accurate. Now looking at the zoom or the telephoto picture taking before updating the device and after updating the device. Once again, I'm noticing the slight difference in HDR and the color science here, and also with the details. The one taken after updating is a little bit more detailed, but at the same time, the difference between the image taken before updating and the one taken after updating seems to be much lower this time around. Okay, now how about the zoom feature thing that Samsung has been talking about a lot? Now, okay, here is a picture of the basic scenery. It's a different one. And here is a picture of it before updating the device. Now before I get into the zoom, you can see the same things over and over again. Better HDR, better color signs here, and also a bit more of a sharper image. So I only focused on 10x, 20x, and 30x zoom to see if there was any difference at all. Now looking at these images, I feel like it's the same points that I mentioned before, only that it's getting trickled down to a much less of an extent. Like as we're zooming in on these, we're finding less and less of a difference. The image taken before updating looks a little bit better because of its saturation and contrast. The image taken after updating the device looks a little bit washed out. I think this is because of super strong HDR and at the same time the lighting of the scene. I do believe that if you were to like edit this photo later on, you would be able to amp up the contrast and the saturation to make it look like the image taken before updating. Now this is the same thing for the 20x zoom as well. Here's the image before updating and here is the image after updating. Okay, now let's finally look at the talk of the town, 30x of the Samsung Galaxy S20. Now this little crane thing is what I focused on, and I feel like the points that I've talked before have trickled down to the most basic part of it. You can see the color difference here. You can see how differently these things are exposed. You can see the difference in the color signs. I mean, the image taken before updating looks a bit more vibrant, but at the same time, there is really no details here. It's okay, to start with, both these images are garbage, but I feel like the image taken after updating looks a bit more usable just because it was how it was. That was the real color of that crane. And I really appreciate Samsung for improving the color signs by quite a bit actually. So I'm actually kind of impressed by this zoom after updating. The one before updating is pretty trash. Okay, now we need to talk about the front camera. You see, when I unboxed this device and started using the camera, I was so excited to see how good the front camera was. In fact, I was so happy and surprised to see this front camera because a lot of Android phones kind of fail at this because of the beauty mode and stuff. It just clears out my face and I do not like that. I like crystal clear and crisp images. Now, looking at the viewfinder, I was super happy with what I saw. But as soon as I took the photo, what I saw was not what I got. Now, here's a pretty good example of this. Here is a screen recording of me trying to take a selfie of myself. And you can see there's a lot of details in the viewfinder. You can see it was like almost 50 degrees Celsius out there. And you can see how I'm like sweating in my forehead, my hair is a mess and everything. But here's an image after actually taking that photo. It is a mushy mess. The colors are not right. Everything is just blurred out. And this just kept happening over and over and over again. At first, I thought this was a focusing issue, but then I took a little bit more photos and I would say every 2 out of 10 photos were in focus and looked pretty good. Okay, coming back to this being a focusing issue, remember the first image that I talked about, the one taken with the wide angle camera with the blurred out buildings where there wasn't enough details? I feel like it's the same processing happening here, but it's just so much more worse. It just applies it to the entire image. And you know what, I don't know what to think about it. It looks pretty bad, so yeah. But fortunately, the update fixed it all. I mean, just look at this image. I mean, I know I don't look great in it, but at the same time, it is crisp, clear, and I'm so happy with it. So in terms of front camera, the update fixed pretty much every single issue I had with it. Now, moving on to nighttime, which is where most camera falls apart. Okay, so this is the first image taken using the wide angle lens of the camera before updating, and the one after updating. Upon close inspection, you can notice that the image after updating looks a little bit better, by like 2%, I would say. I mean, just looking at like the details in the crane and things like that, it just looks a tiny little bit better. But at the same time, one definite thing I'm noticing is the difference in color signs. The image taken after updating looks so much more close to real life than the one taken before updating. Now, with the main lens, the one before updating and the one after updating, weirdly enough, the one taken before updating looks a bit more better. Actually, not a bit, but a lot more better. It's much more sharper, and it almost looked like an image I took with the night mode, even though it's not. My best guess is my hand was super still when I took this image, and the exposure was a lot higher. Now with the zoom lengths, it looks really identical here. Once again, I feel like the one taken before updating looks just a little bit better because of its contrast and saturation, but apart from that, it's the same amount of noise, it's the same amount of details. I do not see much of a difference. Moving into night mode, I honestly expected Samsung to kind of improve it, but I was let down. I did see some changes in this. For example, especially the front-facing night mode. Here's a picture of a selfie I took with night mode using the front-facing camera before updating. And here's an image after updating. Now, if we were to focus on the edges, you can see there is a whole lot more amount of noise in the one taken before updating, which I really hated. So in comparison, the one taken after is not as bright. It doesn't have as much details, but at the same time, the noise is way low. So I strongly prefer that image over the one before updating. In terms of rear camera, here is a few examples of the images taken before updating. Here's a few examples of the images taken after updating. So be your own judge here. I did not notice much of a difference. You see, in terms of camera, there's always an error of margin depending on how you take it. So I can talk about how, oh, that tiny little detail is more there, the tiny little detail is less here, but the noise is higher here, the noise is lower there. So in terms of everything combined, I think it's pretty equal and Samsung did not make much changes to it. To be honest, I'm feeling like if I were to port the Google camera, like the G Cam, into this device, it would be a whole lot more better than Samsung's innate night mode. Let me down in the comments down below if you want to see a video of that, of me porting G Cam into this and do a comparison of it. Okay, now, before I move on to the next category, there are a few things we need to talk about the camera itself. For one, there used to be a lot of autofocus issues. Like, just look at the clip here. It is a bright and sunny day. There is absolutely no reason for this device to not focus properly, but it is still struggling with focus and it takes quite a bit of time to get back in track to the correct focus. Now, after the update, this happened a whole lot less, and even if or when it does go unfocused, it like flips back to the correct point of focus within no time. So a huge props to Samsung for that. Another thing I noticed was just the usability of the camera application. Before, when I was trying to zoom in, I did notice some weird stutters and it kind of lagging. I'm sure you cannot tell from this video, but there definitely was stutters, and it got fixed pretty much, to be honest. And I'm super happy with it. Like zooming in and zooming out, it's so much more smoother after the update than before. Okay, now let's talk about the battery life. Now, as a quick refresher, this device comes with a 4000 mAh battery life, which is pretty beefy for a phone, especially considering how thin and light this is. And also, it also comes with fast wireless charging and with fast charging as well. So even if you do run out of battery, you can charge it up pretty quickly. Now, when we talk about battery life of a device, there is a lot of factors that influence it. If you Bluetooth is on, if you're using it in 4G and 5G all the time, you're definitely going to drain your battery much faster than if you're using just Wi-Fi. And so to keep things constant and to test this out, I set my screen at 70 to 80%, and I only used two applications. That was YouTube and a little bit of Call of Duty when I felt like I need to kill this device faster. And the first test that I did before updating the device was the 120 Hz display setting. And now I found that the device gave me a time of 15 hours and 40 minutes before it hit 15%. Now, why 15%? Well, I feel like that's right about the time that most people start looking for a charger. Now, after updating, I turned on the 120 Hz display again and I tested out the same experiment, and I got 6 hours and 20 minutes before it hit 15%, which is huge. That's like more than an hour difference. So kudos, like props, like Samsung, good job. Now, another option that you have is to choose a higher resolution setting instead of the high refresh rate, which is 3200 by 1400 at 60 Hz. Now, at this setting, before updating the device, I got 7 hours and 25 minutes before it hit 15%, which is really good. But after updating, I found that it got me 7 hours, just a little bit more than 7 hours of screen on time. And to be honest, I'm giving this like a plus 15, actually a minus 30 to plus 30-minute leeway as errors from a test setup. So in conclusion, what seems to be happening is that Samsung definitely did something to improve the battery life while using the 120 Hz option, while Samsung really didn't do much for the other setting. Okay, finally, we are going to talk about the performance. Okay, before we move on to anything else, on a quick note, future Rahul here, guys, and I forgot to talk about the standby battery life of this device. Now, before updating, I found it to be around 93% after 12 hours on standby, and after updating, it was 95% after 12 hours of standby. The performance of this device. Now, you see, what I've got is the Exynos version, which has a number of issues to start with. Well, a few of them was the camera quality being as good as the Snapdragon one, which, I showed you the camera quality has definitely improved. And another thing was heating up issues and also the performance not being on par with the Snapdragon. Okay, so talking about the heating issues of this device, before updating, what I noticed was the phone user get warm to touch more often than not. Even while just using basic things like Instagram or YouTube, it was just warm to touch. So I checked the battery temperature at this point, and it used to be around mid 30 degrees Celsius, and which is a bit higher than the ambient temperature nearby. And yeah, so there I definitely noticed an issue there. And the highest that I did get it to was almost 45 degrees C, which is really high. So to provide a bit of context into this, I was doing two things. I was taking photos using the night mode, and it was processing all of that, and on top of it, I was also recording my screen. So these two combined is a pretty intensive task. At the same time, I also live in the Middle East, so the ambient temperature at this time was low 40 degrees Celsius. And considering mobile phones doesn't have any active cooling system, I'm not surprised that it went up to 45. It happens quite a lot, especially if you leave your phone in the car, it gets hot really fast. So I would take that thing with a grain of salt. At the same time, I feel like it also kind of shows the importance of good thermals in a device, especially for people living in extreme weather conditions, like that 2 to 3 degrees Celsius of the device being running cooler is going to make an impact. Another thing that I didn't mention was when it did hit 45 degrees C, the phone started slowing down quite a bit. As you can see here, it started stuttering and eventually crashing. I had another screen recording after that, and it did not even save anything. It just completely crashed. Now, after the update, I have noticed the thermals of this one has gotten so much better. And in fact, I'm constantly noticing just the normal usage, after normal usage, the temperatures being around low 30s to high 20s, which is exactly what the ambient temperature around me is. Like, it's between high 20 degrees C and low 30 degrees C. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Samsung fixed quite a bit of it with the update. Even after long gaming, I found myself with once again, low to mid 30s, but it never went above high 30 degrees C. So pretty good on Samsung for that, for updating and fixing that issue. In terms of actual usage itself, I haven't really noticed much slowdowns or stutters, with the exception of that one time when the phone was overheating, when it almost hit 45 degrees C and the whole thing crashed. Except for that one specific time, nothing. I haven't noticed anything else. Now, comparing this Exynos to the Snapdragon version, the Exynos is a bit not as powerful as the Snapdragon one, but at the same time, this is plenty powerful. It can handle pretty much anything you're going to throw at it. Even during extended gameplay sessions, I did not notice any slowdowns or frame rate droppings. Before updating, I did notice some heating up of this device. After updating, even that was gone. So, the updates pretty much fixed it all, I would say. And on a teensy little final note, I do feel like the in-screen fingerprint scanner has gotten faster and improved so much. Before updating, I would say about 20% of the time, the fingerprint would not recognize my finger. But after updating it, it is so much better. I would say just like 2 to 5% of the times it will get it wrong, and other times it works perfectly fine. And also, not to mention the fact that it has also gotten faster. Before, I would say it would take like a good long second, sometimes even more, to unlock this device. But now it's pretty snappy, it's pretty fast. And quick tip, if you use more force than usual, since this is an ultrasonic sensor, I think, if you use a little bit more force trying to unlock this fingerprint, it does it a lot faster than when you are just, lightly touching on the fingerprint scanner. Okay, so after that really long things that I talk about, in conclusion, here's what it is. The phone has definitely improved over time. So, the things that you heard about this phone with the initial reviews when it came out, it still stands by that, and it also has gotten better. And also another thing, this phone was around 1,000 USD when it came out. Now you can find it around for 800 in Amazon, which I personally think is a pretty good deal for this device, especially considering how it has gotten better over time instead of getting worse. You see, the reason why I made this video was because I feel like people buy a device or review a device and just doesn't follow up with it. You say that, oh, this device has a specific issue and the OEM might have fixed it, but the consumer, the person watching that video, will never know if that was fixed or not. And they have to go looking for more sources for that. So that is the entire purpose of this video, to talk about all the issues that you thought this device had at the beginning of its launch, and to see how far it's come. And that's about it for this video, guys. I hope you liked it. Make sure you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Once again, it's super important for new tech YouTube people to get a lot of subscribers. My last video didn't do that well, so please make sure to like and subscribe, and until next time, bye.